Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Custody Expanded and Restricted,
Okay.
which is a guidebook specifically for fathers
Right.
navigating the, shall we say, interesting world of child custody battles.
Yeah,
So, have you got a chance to look this one over?
I have. Yeah. This is a really interesting one.
Yeah.
And it's not just a dry legal textbook either.
Right.
The author really weaves in his own personal experiences,
Yeah.
and he's got a very, very strong opinion about the way that the family court system works.
I was hooked right from the intro.
Yeah.
He talks about how he actually won sole custody of his son
Oh,
after a really tough fight.
okay.
And that really comes through in his writing. It's like
Gotcha.
he's saying to the reader, look, this is a battleground, but you can win this. Just come prepared.
Yeah, it's almost like a war manual in a way.
Right.
Right. And he doesn't just focus on one type of custody situation either. He covers everything from like that initial separation period
Yeah.
all the way through to challenges that can pop up years after the divorce is finalized.
So basically, he's covering the whole spectrum of what somebody might encounter.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So let's unpack some of his key points here.
Okay.
One of the things that he comes out strong with
Yeah.
is this idea that family courts are traditionally biased towards mothers,
Uh-huh.
which obviously makes things way harder for dads seeking custody.
Yeah.
Did that resonate with you at all?
Well, it definitely raises some important questions,
Right.
doesn't it? If we just assume there is some kind of like built-in bias,
Ah.
what does that mean for a father going into this process?
Right.
And I think one thing that this book really hammers home is that strategic thinking and early preparation are absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Like playing chess, you have to be thinking several moves ahead.
Trouble moves ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy when you're dealing with something as emotionally charged as a separation or a divorce.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah. So one of the pieces of advice that really surprised me was this idea of staying in the family home.
Oh, really?
I mean, usually when couples separate, one person moves out, right?
Yeah, that's what I would assume too.
It seems counterintuitive to stick around.
Yeah.
But he actually makes a very interesting argument
Okay.
that staying put gives you both a logistical and psychological advantage. Think about it. It shows stability for the child.
Right.
It keeps things feeling normal for them.
Sure.
And it might even influence the child's own preference about where they want to live.
It makes sense.
He even goes so far as to ward against leaving any valuable possessions behind,
Oh, wow.
which honestly never even crossed my mind.
Right.
Like when you're dealing with the emotional storm of a breakup, it's easy to overlook the practical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he's big on securing financial resources right away, too.
Yeah.
He really stresses that custody battles can drain your bank account,
Yeah, I can see how that would happen.
and you don't want to be caught unprepared.
Right.
So it's about protecting your ability to provide for your child,
Yeah.
both emotionally and financially.
Both. That's a good point.
Yeah, so it seems like his overall message is to be proactive and strategic from day one.
Right.
Don't wait for those legal papers to show up before you start taking action.
Yeah, be prepared.
Right, and speaking of being prepared, he is really, really big on documentation,
Okay.
like almost obsessively so.
Yeah, what did he say about that?
He basically says document everything.
Really? Everything.
Every interaction you have with your child, their daily routines, any incidents involving the mother,
Wow.
anything that could potentially help your case.
Okay, so like a detailed log of everything.
Yeah, and honestly, it was a little overwhelming to read that section.
Yeah.
I'm like, do I need to carry a notepad and a camera with me everywhere I go?
Like I'm being watched.
Yeah, exactly. But when you think about it from his perspective of building an ironclad case,
Right.
you want to be able to shut down any accusations and present this like crystal clear picture of your involvement as a father.
Right, and maybe highlight some areas where the mother might fall short.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
And he even suggests going so far as to gather evidence through photos and videos.
Oh, wow.
Even surveillance, if necessary.
Surveillance. That seems pretty extreme.
It does.
Is that even legal?
Well, it depends on the situation, and I'm sure there are legal ways to do it.
Right.
But it really highlights how adversarial these battles can become.
Yeah.
He's not sugarcoating anything.
No.
He's preparing fathers for a fight.
Right.
And sometimes that means taking some pretty drastic measures.
I see.
He also pushes the idea of finding a really good lawyer,
Yeah.
specifically someone who specializes in men's rights in custody battles.
Okay, so someone who's familiar with the system
Yeah, exactly.
and can advocate for their client. All right, so you've got your documentation,
Yeah.
you've got your legal team.
Right.
What's the next big hurdle?
So the next big thing he focuses on is the psychological evaluation.
Okay.
He calls this the key to winning custody.
Really? Why is that?
Well, apparently, the court-ordered psychological evaluation is often seen as like the most influential piece of the puzzle
I see.
when a judge is making their decision.
Okay.
And it's a really in-depth process.
What kind of stuff is involved in that?
So they do interviews, they do those classic psychological tests like the MMPI and the Rorschach ink blots.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes even home visits and observations of how you interact with your child.
Oh, wow. That is intense.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And that's why he spends so much time preparing fathers for this evaluation.
Okay.
He says you need to practice how you would answer potential questions. Think very carefully about how you're presenting yourself.
Yeah.
And really be able to articulate your understanding of your child's needs.
It sounds like you need to go into that really prepared.
You do, and he also says that you need to be able to highlight the mother's weaknesses
Okay.
without directly attacking her.
That sounds like a tough balancing act.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you want to demonstrate that you're the more stable and involved parent,
Sure.
but you don't want to come across as bitter or vengeful.
Right.
The focus should always be on what's best for the child.
Right. Not on tearing the other parent down.
Right.
Okay. So let's say the evaluation doesn't go your way. What then?
He talks about appealing the results, but it sounds like a long shot.
Yeah. It doesn't sound easy to appeal an evaluation.
No, it's not. But he does outline a few grounds for doing so.
Like what?
Like if you believe there was bias on the part of the evaluator
Okay.
or some kind of procedural error. He also mentions the possibility of mediation.
So mediation would be a way to present your case in a less formal setting
Yeah.
and maybe have a chance to explain your evidence and arguments more thoroughly?
Right.
Okay.
And what I found really interesting was how much he emphasizes persistence.
Yeah, because these battles can be really draining
They can.
and it'd be easy to get discouraged.
Absolutely.
But he's really saying you got to keep fighting
Yeah.
for what you believe is right for your child.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he also gives this brief overview of the general custody criteria used by courts across the country.
Okay.
You know, things like the child's best interest, each parent's fitness,
Yeah, the basics.
stability. But what I found interesting was that he mentions the book also includes state-specific criteria.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, because those can vary quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he really urges readers to research their own state's laws.
Correct.
Because those specific details can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
It's not. It's like he's providing a toolbox.
Right.
But it's up to each individual father to use those tools effectively.
You got to know which tool to use when.
Exactly. He can't fight the battle for them. So this deep dive has already been pretty eye-opening.
It has.
It seems like navigating these custody battles requires this mix of legal knowledge, emotional resilience,
Yeah.
and a serious dedication to your child's well-being.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that really jumped out at you from this first part of the book?
Yeah, what really strikes me is how the author doesn't sugarcoat anything, you know?
Yeah.
He gives this really realistic and honestly pretty raw perspective
Yeah.
on what fathers can expect. But at the same time, he offers a sense of hope,
Right.
you know, a roadmap to success.
If you approach it the right way.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's really important for anyone going through this to know
Yeah.
they're not alone and that it is possible to come out on top.
Right. To be successful.
Before we get into some of his more specific advice, let's take a quick pause,
Okay.
and then we'll come back and discuss some of the tactics he outlines for dealing with the opposing side.
Sounds.
Okay, so we've talked about, being prepared, documenting everything.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, custody battles can get pretty nasty.
Oh, yeah.
Emotions run high.
Right.
Things can get really personal.
Uh-huh.
And the book doesn't shy away from that reality at all.
No, not at all.
In fact, he dives into some of the common tactics used by opposing counsel.
Yeah.
Things like, personal attacks,
Yeah.
trying to paint the father as an unfit parent,
Right.
even using the child's emotions to try and gain some leverage. Reading that section, I kind of felt anxious, to be honest.
I bet.
Like, oh, man, this is going to be rough.
It's understandable to feel that way.
Yeah.
But what's important is recognizing those tactics for what they are.
Right.
Attempts to undermine your credibility
Yeah.
and damage your relationship with your child.
Yep.
It's not easy.
No.
But you got to be prepared for it.
And so he gives some advice on how to counter those moves.
Okay.
Staying calm.
Yeah.
Refocusing the conversation back to the child's best interests.
Ah.
And having that rock-solid documentation to refute any accusations.
Right, you got to have your facts straight.
You do.
And it's not about getting into a mudslinging contest either.
Right.
He really encourages fathers to maintain a civil demeanor.
Yeah.
Even towards opposing counsel.
So don't stoop to their level.
Exactly. Rise above the fray.
Right.
Let your actions speak louder than words.
It's powerful advice.
It is.
But it's easier said than done, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're in the heat of the moment, feeling attacked.
Especially when you're feeling attacked.
Right.
It's hard to stay calm.
Yeah. And he really emphasizes the need to be able to, like, provide detailed information about your child's life.
Okay.
And I'm not just talking about basic stuff.
Right.
I'm talking about knowing your child inside and out.
Like what kind of stuff?
Okay, so think about it.
Uh-huh.
You know, their favorite foods,
Yeah.
their clothing sizes,
Okay.
daily routines,
Yeah.
favorite activities,
Right.
their friends, how they handle different situations.
Yeah.
He's basically saying you need to be able to demonstrate that you are actively involved
Okay.
and attuned to your child's needs.
Yeah, not just on a superficial level, but
Right.
like a deep understanding
Yeah.
the personality, their strengths and weaknesses,
Yes.
their emotional landscape.
It's about proving that you are the parent who truly gets them,
I see.
right?
Okay.
And so he even suggests creating this comprehensive document.
Oh, wow.
He calls it Interactions of Parents and Child.
Okay.
And it covers everything.
Really?
Your interactions with the child's interactions with the mother,
Yeah.
and why the other parent might not be the best choice for custody.
He's essentially saying, don't just sit back and react.
Right.
Take control of the narrative.
Yeah, be proactive.
Be proactive in building your case.
Yes.
And demonstrating that depth connection with your child.
Exactly.
I like that.
And he also gives some interesting advice about interacting with the child during the evaluation,
Okay.
especially during like that monitored play session.
Yeah. Oh, right.
It's not just about showing up.
Right.
It's about how you engage.
So what does he say about that?
So he says, you know, don't be afraid to show affection.
Okay.
Be genuinely engaged.
Uh-huh.
Relate to your child on their level.
Yeah.
Most importantly, have fun.
Right, like actually have fun.
Right.
Not just like pretend.
Yeah, don't force it.
Okay.
It sounds simple, but I can imagine under that kind of pressure,
Right?
it's easy to freeze up.
You overthink things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's about demonstrating that natural loving bond you have with your child,
Right.
and not forcing it or trying to put on some kind of show.
The evaluator is watching for those genuine moments of connection.
They are.
Those little things that reveal the true dynamic between you and your child.
And he also cautions against trying to fake it.
Because kids are smart.
They are.
They can sense when you're not being authentic.
And that can backfire
It can.
big time.
Yeah.
Another point that he makes that really stuck with me is this idea that, you know, everyone involved in this case
No.
is likely going to take sides.
Yeah, that's human nature.
It is.
Right.
And he advises fathers to be prepared for that.
Okay. So like what?
So expect that, you know, her family and friends are going to be like,
Gonna defend her.
yeah, she's a good mom.
Right.
But he also says, you need to build your own network of support.
So people who can vouch for you.
People who can vouch for your character,
Yeah.
for your parenting skills.
Yeah.
People who have witnessed firsthand those positive interactions with your child.
Makes sense.
And be careful about who you choose.
Right. Don't just pick like random acquaintances.
Right. You want people who genuinely know you,
Yeah.
respect you,
Right.
whose opinions will hold weight with the court.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And don't reveal too much information
Right.
to people who might not be truly on your side.
Yeah. You got to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And your case.
It's a reminder that these battles can be incredibly personal
Yeah.
and emotionally charged.
Uh-huh.
And not everyone's going to understand or support your decisions.
Right.
And as he keeps emphasizing,
Yeah.
the crucial thing is to stay focused on what's best for your child.
The child comes first.
Always.
Always.
That has to be your guiding principle throughout this whole process.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the legal guidelines surrounding custody.
All right.
He gives a brief overview of the general criteria used by courts nationwide.
Yeah.
But I was interested in his emphasis on the fact that these guidelines can vary
Oh, they can vary a lot.
from state to state.
Yeah.
So he encourages readers to research their own state's laws.
Right.
And pay attention to those nuances because they can have a major impact.
A huge impact.
Yeah.
It's like trying to navigate a foreign country.
Right.
You need to know the local customs,
You got to know the rules.
the rules
Yeah.
of the road.
This section also touched on the concept of parental alienation,
Okay.
which I have to admit I wasn't super familiar with.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit? Yeah, so parental alienation is when one parent tries to damage the child's relationship
With the other parent.
with the other parent,
Okay.
often through like manipulation or negative influence.
I see.
And it can be really damaging to a child's emotional well-being.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he suggests documenting any instances of this behavior
Okay.
because it can be a significant factor in custody decisions.
So it's about demonstrating that you are committed to fostering a healthy relationship
Yes.
between your child and both parents.
Yeah.
Not trying to isolate them or turn them against the other parent.
Right, and he actually provides a pretty detailed list of examples of behaviors
Oh, wow.
that could be considered detrimental to a parent's case.
Okay.
And it's not just the obvious stuff.
Like what?
So, beyond like drug or alcohol abuse
Right.
or neglecting the child's basic needs,
Yeah.
he also includes more subtle issues,
Oh.
like constantly changing schedules
Oh.
or failing to inform the other parent about important events in the child's life.
Right. So it's about demonstrating reliability.
Yes, consistency.
Consistency as a parent.
Exactly.
It's almost overwhelming how many factors can come into play
It's a lot.
during a custody battle.
It's a lot to keep track of,
It is.
but it's also empowering
How so?
because by understanding these potential pitfalls,
Mm-hmm.
fathers can proactively work to avoid them
Okay.
and build a stronger case.
So it's not just about playing defense.
Right.
It's about being on offense as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about being informed and prepared.
He also talks about the possibility of appealing a custody decision
He does.
if you feel it's unfair.
Right. But he emphasizes that this is often a long shot.
Yeah, it doesn't sound easy to
Shot.
appeal.
He does outline some possible grounds for appeal,
Like what kind of stuff?
like if there was bias on the part of the judge,
Okay.
or if new evidence comes to light that wasn't available during the original trial.
Hmm.
But he's also realistic.
Yeah.
He emphasizes the importance of having realistic expectations.
Right.
Custody battles are rarely easy.
No, they sound pretty tough.
They are.
And no guarantees.
There are no guarantees, but with the right approach
Uh-huh.
and a strong commitment to your child's well-being,
Right.
it is possible to achieve a positive outcome.
You got to fight for what's right,
Yeah, even when it's hard.
even when it's hard.
And that's really the heart of this book, isn't it?
Yeah, what is it?
Empowering fathers to fight for their rights
Yeah.
and for their children,
Right.
even when the odds seem stacked against them.
Absolutely.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive
It has.
into the world of child custody battles.
It's a whole other world.
It is. It's clearly a complex process,
Very complex.
often emotionally charged,
Uh-huh.
but it feels like we're starting to get a better handle on the landscape.
Yeah, I think
By understanding the legal landscape,
Uh-huh.
being prepared,
Right.
and remaining focused on the child's best interest.
Absolutely.
Fathers can significantly increase their chances of success.
Okay, so before we move on to the final part of the book,
Yeah?
where he talks about maintaining a healthy co-parenting relationship,
Yeah.
even after the dust settles,
Right.
let's take a quick break.
Sounds good. We're back and ready to kind of wrap up our deep dive
Okay.
into custody expanded and restricted.
Yeah.
You know, this guidebook has really given us a lot to think about,
It has.
hasn't
Yeah,
it?
a lot of heavy stuff.
Yeah.
The legal battles, the emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
But I think, at the end of the day, it's important to remember that
Right.
it's not all about conflict.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
goal is to create that stable and loving environment
Right.
for the child,
For the child.
even if the parents are no longer together.
Exactly.
So how does the author approach that?
Well, he actually dedicates a whole section to the idea of co-parenting.
Okay.
And you know how to make that work,
Yeah.
even after like a really difficult custody battle.
Right, because I would imagine that's one of the biggest challenges, right?
is.
Is letting go of the anger and resentment
Yeah,
and finding a way to work together
right.
for the sake of the child.
Exactly. And he really stresses the importance of communication.
Okay.
Clear, consistent,
Uh-huh.
and respectful communication.
Between the parents.
Yeah, between the parents.
So what does that look like practically?
Well, he even suggests like putting a communication plan in writing,
Oh, wow.
outlining things like, how often you'll talk,
Okay.
what methods you'll use, phone, email, text.
Right.
what topics are off limits.
So it takes the emotion out of it to some extent.
Yeah, it's very practical.
Right.
Just to minimize conflict.
Keeps things focused on the child's needs.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he also talks about flexibility and compromise,
Oh, yeah.
which I think is huge.
Yeah, you're not going to agree on everything.
You're not.
But you have to be willing to bend a little bit.
To make it work.
Yeah, to make things work.
So does he give any examples of that?
He does, like being flexible with visitation schedules if something unexpected comes up.
Yeah.
Or being willing to adjust your parenting style slightly
Right.
to accommodate the other parent's preferences.
So it's really about putting the child's needs above your own ego
Exactly.
and your desire to win.
Yeah, he really emphasizes that a lot.
Which is tough.
It is.
Because you're coming out of this battle.
You want to win.
You want to win.
Right.
But he's reminding fathers that the custody battle may be over, but the journey of co-parenting is just beginning.
It's a long road.
It is a long road.
Yeah.
And the child benefits most
Absolutely.
when both parents can put aside their differences
Right.
and present that united front.
Yeah, I think that's really important
Is
for the child's well-being.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what would you say is like the most important takeaway?
I think it's this. While this guidebook offers a wealth of strategic advice, tactical maneuvers,
Right.
the most important thing is to never lose sight of your child's emotional well-being.
Yeah.
That has to be your North Star
That's a really good way to put it.
throughout this whole process.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy to get caught up
Oh, it is.
in the legal battles,
The back and forth.
the documentation, the strategies,
Yeah.
that you lose sight of the fact.
Lose the forest for the trees.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
And it's ultimately about the child.
About the child.
Custody battles are about more than just winning.
Right.
They're about ensuring that your child
Yeah.
has a safe, loving, and stable environment to thrive in.
And sometimes that means making compromises.
It does.
Letting go of the anger.
Yeah.
And finding a way to co-parent effectively.
This deep dive has been a journey.
It has.
We've explored the complexities of the legal system,
Yeah.
the emotional challenges of custody battles,
It's a lot.
and the importance of putting the child's needs
First and foremost.
always.
Yeah.
So hopefully our listeners
Yeah.
feel a little bit more informed,
A little more prepared
empowered.
to navigate this difficult terrain.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And even though it can feel overwhelming at times,
Oh, it can.
having a clear understanding of your rights,
Yeah.
the legal process, and the strategies that we've discussed today
Right. Having a plan.
can make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
But just as important as those strategies
Yeah.
is that focus on the child's well-being.
The child's well-being.
That's what we need to keep in mind
Always.
every step of the way.
Well said.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
We hope you found it helpful.
We'll see you next time.